colleague the other day reflecting about the self-isolation we're experiencing while sheltering in place during the pandemic. Suggested this might be a good time for us to recenter ourselves. For a potter, that term and that image of recentering or centering is really essential. If anything useful is going to come out of clay spinning on a wheel, it begins with centering the mass of clay. And centering clay on a wheel isn't a matter so much of wrestling with the clay as really wrestling with yourself. If the potter's distracted or upset about something, it's very hard to center clay. The process involves forming a mold out of one's hands and holding it still while the clay yields to it in the motion of the wheel. It's not so much a matter of strength, really, as that stillness as the potter holds oneself as the clay in its chaos and disorder moves through the mold that you've created with your hands. Hard for many of us to be still, but that's the challenge of the potter when it comes to centering clay. In my 50 years of doing ceramic arts, I've noticed that even the most accomplished of potters can throw a piece of centered clay out of whack. And in fact, it can happen a couple of times in the process of making a form. Not a few of us may feel the same way right now in this time of self-isolation and pandemic. It's easy to be overwhelmed by the numbers that we see regarding the cases and hospitalizations, the deaths, now the job losses, the destruction to the economy. It can knock anybody out of kilter. If the potter has patience and steady hands, they can take that piece that was once centered and recenter it in the process, again by holding steady and allowing the clay to move through the mold that one's hands are creating along with the motion of the wheel. As they do so, I've noticed over the years that the wobble or the mistake or the bump that has occurred as the pot has been thrown off course will find itself protruding out through the lip of the piece. The rest of the body of the piece may be nice and centered, but the lip itself will have an imbalance and will have to be removed. In working with clay, not everything goes as planned. Not everything goes as expected. And for the vessel to be used in the future, you want that lip level and straight. When this pandemic is all over and the new normal begins, we'll all have to deal with new losses. The losses of jobs, of wealth, and at worst, loved ones. The pandemic is teaching us many things, of course. It teaches us that sheltering in place is for the privileged who can afford it. Not everyone can. It's teaching us that the consequences of this disease are not equally distributed by race, age, or social class. And for all of us who are in self-isolation, it reminds us that the quality of our living is really defined by the quality of our relationships. I think my colleague is correct to suggest that this pandemic is a time for us to recenter ourselves and the things that really matter in life. To ground ourselves in the things that matter most in life. To affirm our purpose and integrity in living. To honor and celebrate the relationships that mean the most to us, even when at distance. However challenging or painful this journey of the pandemic may be for us, something beautiful and enduring can emerge when we're centered. Don't you think?